Got a packed agenda, so we're going to jump right in. We are going to start with a presentation by Sarah Pilling and Robin Mann on a proposal for the Ready for 100 initiative. Take it away.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Great.
Go ahead.
So we didn't rehearse this, obviously, but thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I'm Robin Mann, local. We're both Sierra Club members, and we're delighted to speak with you about the Ready for 100 initiative. This is a national Sierra Club campaign, but in that regard, it's just nationally designed and resourced, but locally led by community volunteers that just come together to pursue a local initiative to transition their communities to 100% clean energy. There are specific guidelines that all the Ready for 100 teams pursue. They include goals that are common to all the initiatives, achieving a 100% clean electric grid by 2035 in the community, and or energy demand for electricity, and then by 2050 to achieve a transition off fossil fuels for all energy needs. We are happy to be celebrating today the 100th city that has made the commitment to set the goals for their community. Cincinnati, Ohio became the 100th city. The approach with this initiative is to start by setting a goal, and then to develop a plan that is community-driven, with as much inclusion of community members as possible, a plan for making that happen. I guess just another...
You sent the proposed resolution to Matt. I assume that you distributed it.
Yes, and so we've modified that. At least we've adapted it for now with language that we received from the Board of Health, and there are a couple of tweaks that we would want to see, and of course any feedback from you on other aspects of the language, but we will be seeking to have some updated language related to the IPCC report, just recognizing the tremendous urgency of action at all levels of government, local, state, national. And then very importantly, there's an opportunity for the EAC to kind of define how they might like to be recognized for their participation, whether formally in the resolution, and whether that would be actually having a delegation of the responsibility, or in how the kind of language. We have some language from another from Chester County that may be of interest to you. This language is just one of the aspects of the resolution, which is the community, the committee of the municipality, to be named later, will provide guidance for commissioning a committee and or contractor to draft an energy transition plan for achieving these goals by X date, to include interim milestones, financial impacts, equity metrics, potential financing mechanisms, and percentage of clean energy that is locally produced. And just to underscore, it's very vital to this whole campaign that the effort be planned in a way that is going to be equitable, that we ensure that people have affordable energy. A very important aspect of that is if they have access to ways to save energy so they can reduce their dependence on energy and bring down their costs. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, and she can talk a little bit about other communities in the area that are doing this and how we might collaborate.
So we, in Chester County, Westchester, Phoenixville, Downingtown, and Kennett Square have finished. Their resolutions have been passed, and Westchester is just galloping along. They're going to work with 7 smaller boroughs around them to do a collective thing. In Montgomery County, and of course Radnor sort of, is everywhere in this. I mean, we live in zip code 19010, but we're in Radnor, but that's Lower Merion. Lower Merion is very actively doing it. So is White Marsh. So is Conshohocken, West Conshohocken, Upper Marion, Tredyffrin is working on it, as is Newtown Square. And at the Climate Expo, you were downstairs, I was upstairs. We had a long conversation between they were EAC members from Newtown Square and Tredyffrin. The lady in Newtown Square lives up the hill from the Willows, so she was there. And the Tredyffrin ladies go to the Wayne Presbyterian Church. So we began to talk about ways eventually, once we get this over the threshold with the resolution, how we would begin to work collectively, because we've got more input and we've got more bang for the buck. At the expo, which was really very interesting, I know it was a Sunday afternoon, 2 young students from the high school came to us. They didn't mention your group, Colleen, but are they the kids that you've been, are they the Earth Action Leadership Council?
Yes, they are.
Okay, well, it was Allie Beal and Becca Jacek, and they were very enthusiastic, and they just grabbed the ball. And they have a petition going, online petition, and they are working very hard. We didn't recruit them, they basically recruited us. And they're very excited, and we have our list, which started out as a Sierra Club list, Sierra Club members in Radnor Township. Then it was Sierra Club members in Radnor Township who would accept email. And then there was a whole group of Sierra Club members in Radnor who wouldn't accept email. So we invited all those who would take email, got an email from us saying who we were and what we were doing, blah, blah, blah. And then Robin and I undertook to write letters to the Sierra Club members who didn't have email, particularly as a high percentage of them were friends of mine, but they don't want to get email. So they're now having to work with that. So we have about 25 names of people who say, I'm on this.
And we're broadening way
And
beyond.
we're way
Sierra
beyond
Club, so
that.
that's
We
just
have
the start.
Villanova, new sustainability department is very excited about it. Eastern is, I talked to the biology professor, they don't really have a department. We're chasing down Cabrini. And then we, at our last grassroots meeting, we came up with about 20 to 25 entities in the township who we think would be willing, at least would be educated, all the churches, all the schools, and the universities. The Wayne Business Association is already working on this through giving up plastic and styrofoam and plastic straws, but I've got a good relationship with Chris Todd, and he's already said to me, Sarah, I'm building a new restaurant in Malvern, and he said, I've got new appliances and technology in the new store, and I've got the same thing, but old in Wayne, and he said, I cannot believe the difference in the electric bills.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to grow. Climate change is in the news every day. It's very hard to say it isn't there. The big issue right now is to get a resolution to the commissioners for them to sign on. We've been told informally that they think we have 5 of 7 votes. But we've got to get the language, and the piece we really encourage you to do is to give us the language that you would want in it. The Board of Health has, and we go back to them in December because we think that they think and we think that it's the physical effects of climate change that people in Radnor are going to see first. Heat, storms, bugs, weeds growing, everything of that element, and the increased incidence of disease. So it's very strong in the public health end of it, which we think is appropriate. Sea level rise is never going to bother anybody in Radnor unless they happen to have a beach house. But so we would like to invite language from you.
Well, first of all, we would hope to have your support for this whole effort, and we also would want to answer any questions.
Yeah.
We do have a PowerPoint we can send you if we didn't send that to you previously, if that would just be useful for background. And there's additional material, on the website about the campaign in general. So, but yeah, that would be what our hope is, that the EAC would endorse it and then sort of sort out how you'd best like to participate.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. I think you've done tremendous work, and I want to thank you for the effort that you put into kind of gathering this momentum and getting folks on board with it. And just hearing about all the other communities and all the other groups within our own community that are really excited about this makes me think we better get on the bandwagon. And I would ask this group first for sort of your assessment of whether or not you believe we should pursue this. And then second, if we could talk a little bit about how we form that language that you need us to contribute, as well as, other, I think, strategic questions that I'd like to kind of raise with the group about how do we use some of that momentum that's out there? How do we make the most of the folks that are interested and willing to contribute their energy to this to make sure that we can kind of get a focused product out of it? So let me step back and first invite discussion from the rest of the group.
Could you give me examples of some concrete thing, initiatives or things that were done?
Microphone?
Yeah, could you give me some examples of some concrete things that people are doing, in regards to this, as far as, I don't know, I'm not clear as to what people are actually doing,
Right.
other than spreading the word.
So a plan would involve looking at community government offices, services, institutions, the residents, and identify, where we are in terms of shifting to clean energy sources. For some of the institutions, for the Radnor Township government, for the Radnor, there was an inventory done, the Climate Action Plan, a few years ago. There's yes, there is a need to take a look at that now and see where the township is, and to see what the opportunities are to save a lot more energy, and then to transition over a period of time to sourcing clean energy from wherever for government and institutional buildings, other energy uses, as well as the residents. And some of what's involved is building awareness among community members of the opportunities to have an energy audit and find out where they are wasting energy unnecessarily and without their knowledge in a lot of cases, and then provide them with awareness of what the other opportunities are for clean energy providers. The energy generation is now provided in a deregulated state.
You can change your energy source.
Yes.
PECO delivers, but I've switched to an all-solar company. I'm paying $1 a month less than I was. It wasn't the money that was important. It was to be sure that everything I got was 100% solar.
I think another aspect of the plan would be to identify opportunities for local generation of energy. It's possible that we could encourage a group of institutions to pool their efforts and develop what's called a power purchase agreement, where they actually, do an RFP and find an energy provider, clean energy provider that can serve them, in a cost-effective way. So those are some of the examples. Yeah.
I totally support this 100%. I'm kind of on the same idea. It's so big that we don't know how to attack it. So I think when you're saying you want us to put some sort of language in, we used to have a green team. That was sort of where the EAC met with the township. Right. And the idea is that when something comes up, like right now we have to replace the township roof, Sulpizio Gym, the Public Works, said, did you think of going solar? And it's like, they didn't even think of it. And you don't even know when our input should start. But I think that's sort of what the idea is to sort of re-implement the green team so we can get involved on that level. I don't know.
I would think township, EAC, and then residents.
And residents, absolutely.
And the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that what you're saying in terms of the language, that's what we would agree is our
wanna know
involvement?
what it is you,
I mean, the EAC could certainly take responsibility for identifying what would be the most appropriate team to
Okay.
oversee the effort, something that would be not saddling the EAC directly, but overseeing defining roles.
Agreed, and I think it's a good way to think about it, but I also think, too, that just by virtue of having a regular discussion about that and a green team that is sort of tasked with going out and talking to township officials, bringing back information and kind of keeping the discussion going, we can kind of hold folks accountable as well as ourselves and make sure that we're making progress. To Robin's point too about, or maybe Sarah brought this up about, sort of bulk power purchase agreements. One of the things we found when we did this kind of thing before is that the more people you have as potential customers, the better you can kind of negotiate those deals. And I think that's a mechanism potentially for getting both the government side and the private side on board with the same kind of thing.
Philadelphia has just set up a solar farm in Adams County, and 22% of the electricity needs for their city buildings are going to be covered through this solar farm, so it doesn't have to be in Radnor Township. There are all sorts of opportunity. I met a couple who live in, I don't know whether they own a rental in Media. They live just outside of Media, but I think they're in Upper Providence, whatever it is. They have solar on their house in town in Media, but they're getting the benefit of their house that isn't even in Media. Their electric bills come down to $80 a month. So part of this is just getting people to open their minds and to go, oh, and I know some of you have the carbon footprint quiz that Mainline Unitarian Church developed. It's a wonderful way to start a conversation with individuals. Do you drive an electric car? No. Do you take your cloth bags to the grocery store? Yes. Do you lower your thermostat at night? Well, so it opens the mind, and people who I've done this with go, I never thought of that. So it's going to be big education pieces, and it's not going to be accomplished in 1 minute. But we do know that particularly this building, which is now 10 years old, the heat and the air conditioning are both on simultaneously, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And on a sunny day, the shades come down and the lights go on. So we know there is so much waste in this building, and Bob wants to have an assessment done of this building, Public Works, Sulpizio, Kreuzberg Center, and then because the library doesn't know what their utilities are going to be, he wants to have some sort of an assessment done to get an idea to begin to wrap our minds around this. So that's the background we've got. We don't want to dump it in your lap. We can go through what EAC in Westchester said and what EAC said in Haverford Township and send you that language to give you a base to start this.
I think that would be helpful, and I think the idea of reinstating the green team almost in parallel to this, they don't have to be tightly coupled, but I think we can kind of proceed with the understanding that that's part of what we're trying to do. That helps us to kind of maintain the flexibility we need to adjust and kind of figure out what's needed going forward, if that makes sense. So,
And know that other project that you're doing, what is it, Sustainability Pennsylvania?
yes.
That's also in the Haverford Township resolution. They're working in parallel. It's not one above the other.
And that's a good point. We've made good progress on that, and I know the Board of Commissioners is very interested in kind of hearing about that, and it's a feather in our cap, so we ought to kind of use
It's
that
all
as,
of a piece.
yeah, it's all connected.
So,
Totally agree.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
If you want to send the language to me, I'll take a crack at it and then send it around.
That would be
Get
great.
it started,
Thank
and
you.
then we can get our input to you.
Thank
I'll
you.
get on that.
I just had a quick question, which was, what Matt had circulated was sort of the draft language that you guys were working on. Do you have an idea of how soon you want feedback, or how soon you're going to submit it to the Board of Commissioners? Because, I mean, even the resolution is just a resolution calling on us to commit to a goal. It doesn't
Exactly.
actually do anything.
That's right.
Right,
Oh,
so,
Go ahead.
Well, our timing is the first of the year to
Okay.
go to the commissioner, so we have a little bit of time.
okay. And you guys are going to present it to the commissioners because you're leading the project for the Sierra Club. We're just being asked to look at the language to make suggestions
Well,
for
we're in
improvement and.
Fighting is to
I
widen
under-
the circle.
I understand, but someone's got to lead the charge on something, and it doesn't make sense for 8 people to lead the same charge. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
At this point, my suggestion would be, why don't we call a vote and see if we want to support this and move forward? Is that okay with you guys? Sure. Okay. Can I have a motion to pursue Ready for 100?
Yeah.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Is it unanimous? Okay, good. It passes. So we're on board. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you. All right, next up, Margie Reinhardt is going to talk to us about some education ideas.
Yeah, so I know we're short on time. I'll try to go through this really quickly. How do I get this to show up? Oh, there it is.
There it goes.
So I'm new, as you know, and I know we can't spread ourselves too thin, but I just wanted to share some things that were important to me, and actually I'm not familiar with this format here. Oh, I see what they're doing. Yeah. So actually, the one thing I want to talk about, it would fit nicely in with what Robin and Sarah were saying. Anyway, so one of my, I guess, pet peeves, but I think is really important because I did the Master Naturalist training with the Perkiomen watershed, and I'm really quite aware of watersheds, is using lawn chemicals, and just has really far-reaching impacts. I looked at the Radnor Stormwater Management Statement, and they have a very sort of loose statement on try to use less lawn chemical types of things. So I think we could beef that up a little bit. And I just got all these facts and figures about water use, but also pesticide and other chemical use that is done on lawns. And in fact, suburban lawns use more chemicals than farmland does overall. And this is just a list of chemicals. I got these all from scholarly journals. How it affects dogs, I think if people knew that this isn't very good for their dogs, yet they're putting this out on their own lawn with their dog, they might think differently, not to mention the dog brings it home then, any kind of chemicals they got on them. Yes.
So I appreciate the scholarly journals. Has anyone translated this into like a flyer or something digestible that says, hey, if you're putting these 5 chemicals on your lawn, ask your lawn care company because you're killing your dogs?
To have some project with regard to this, I could certainly do that.
Okay, because obviously,
Yeah.
you couldn't hand this to a homeowner with
I
a dog
know,
and say,
I know, but I'm
look what
trying
you're
to
doing to your dog.
convince you.
Right.
Yeah. And this is where I come from, is the scholarly stuff. And then, of course, through the watershed, it gets even into the ocean, and it affects so much of life. And for what? So you have a nice monoculture of grass on your lawn. So my proposal is, certainly, I think making the brochure is a great idea. Going through schools, even grade schools, not to so much teach the small children, but give them like a coloring sheet, of how have little bad chemicals on their lawn and then going out into the ocean and hurting the dolphins or something that appeals to them. And then say, take this home to your parents, and make the parents feel guilty about this. Things like that. But one little thing I'd like to propose, and it might go along with Robin and Sarah, is, and this is a big endeavor, but to have like an eco fair, like we have there's a Wayne Jazz Fest, there are other festivals. People love to go to festivals. If you have beer, you have, some music, you could get tons of vendors for all of these various things like, rain gardens and permeable pavement, alternatives to chemicals for your lawn, and so forth. And I thought that would be a lot of fun. And we could certainly have brochures and other educational materials for the public. So try to go through this. You gave us this, Matt, I believe. So if we get some school groups or something to work with us, they could possibly get funding. Yeah, so there are all kinds of facts and figures, and easy suggestions how people could keep their lawn nice without chemicals. Just the old lime or sulfur, get the pH right. Using clover to act as a nitrogen fixer to fertilize your lawn. And granted, it has to be kind of a change of kind of your whole cultural outlook, that you don't have to have this monoculture of the same grass on your lawn. It just needs to be green. Also things called like True Green used to be ChemLawn, right? Now they call themselves True Green, but try finding the ingredients they put down. You cannot find it.
Have you ever asked them?
Pardon?
Have you ever asked them?
I haven't asked them, but I've looked through these various reviews, and apparently people say they won't even tell you when you engage them, but that they'll list it sometimes on the invoice. So I don't know, I have never talked to them. Yeah. Any comments or questions? I went through it really quickly. I don't know what you think about the Eco Fair, but basically I'm looking for a project. If you guys have another suggestion, I'm more than happy to do that. But I've joined this organization to do something, and this is one thing that I'm interested in, but anything else I'd be more than welcome to take on.
Thank you, Margie. That's great. I do have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. So thinking about kind of ways of getting the word out to folks, I've struggled with this a little bit. We hear sometimes about residents who aren't on social media, don't have email access and things like that. But I suspect there are a lot of folks that do, and I wonder if we should be doing more to kind of disseminate educational materials in general through the website or through YouTube or through Facebook or something else.
Neighborhood Watch, how many people are, or not Neighborhood Watch, Neighborhood, pardon?
Radnor Patch?
Yeah,
Is that
you
what
know,
it
the like local social media, Radnor Trails
Yep.
group. Yeah.
We had the same kind of issue with the recycling project where they had the really nice flyer, but we didn't really know how to get it around. So yeah, some way of, is there like a newsletter that goes out? Like I know I get emails from my commissioner periodically. Is there a way to?
Well, there is that publication, that Radnor publication. We could publish something in that.
I think the problem you're going to run into is that I don't think any of these things are widely read or paid attention. I mean, the civic-minded among us probably do, but I think that
And that's why I thought
it's a
the
pretty
eco-fair-
low. I think I think the eco fair would be a great idea.
I do too, actually, and I was thinking of the Earth Day stuff that we've seen over the years, but you could even go bigger than that, and if we had a little bit of funding, which kind of ties into grant writing, or, you know, maybe the township would want to kick in something, or maybe
Well,
both.
you just charge the vendors to set up a booth. It funds itself.
Okay.
Pico will
It does.
kick in a bunch of money probably because it can
Yeah, I
go
think
towards
it's
their
pretty
budget.
easy. Even Home Depot, they sell so much of that.
Right.
That's
You know, it's
interesting.
probably not gonna
Yeah,
be-
That's
make it a business as well as, you know,
Yeah.
make it pay for itself.
Sure. I'm,
Your brewery.
Yeah.
all of that.
You can have
Would it be
raffles
possible
of
to jump on
things.
any-
You can do raffles of rain barrels, and, you know, you get Home Depot,
yeah, that's a
donate
great
that
idea.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to jump on an existing fair? Like, it might be, you might run into a problem with like space, 'cause you're gonna have like shutting down streets or parking lots, but we already have like the Radnor Fall Fair. Is there a way to get like, talk to the organizers there and be like, can I have like this area for this purpose? And then maybe do that for a year, and then you
Eco
could, then if it
Yeah.
works
Yeah.
out, you could,
Yeah, this would be a huge endeavor.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Well,
That's an
who runs
interesting idea.
and licenses all those fairs? Is that the Wayne Business Association? Does anyone
the
know?
answer to that. That's a good question.
I would imagine, that sounds like it'd be, you know,
it could be that some people who already go to these fairs would tie right into this. And maybe you could talk about it in organizing it in a way that those are people who are in the same place.
Yeah.
You
Chamber
could have
of
some sort of activity near them and, you know, just sort of take something existing and make it work for those purposes.
I love it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that'd be
so
great.
that might be a good thing to kind of spend a little time doing some research on and see. I like that idea of like, you know, just kind of take a corner of an existing fair and see if you can expand from there. And if you
That
get
is a
enough
good idea.
momentum, kind of create your own event.
okay.
Good.
I like festivals myself.
Well, and it's kind of a big thing here. They draw a lot of crowds, you know, the kids come out and families come out, and
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's kind of a good way to,
So instead of just preaching to the choir all the time.
exactly, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good, thanks so much.
Right, turn this off.
Yeah, I guess it's all right.
If you did that brochure, you could give it to all the vet offices.
Oh, that's a good idea.
hand it out
That is a-
Oh, that's a great idea too, yeah.
And I have a
I like
daughter
it.
who's a graphic designer, so she can make it look professional.
Nice.
a printer, I'll print it for you.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. Next up is a proposal to put together a Year of the Bird proclamation. This is something that the Audubon Society approached us about. I just want to put it before this group and see if there's interest in pursuing it. They have a bunch of communities that have signed on. This is another one where I don't think there's a lot of action involved. It's really just kind of getting the Board of Commissioners to sign on and say, yes, we support this. Any interest?
Certainly have no objection to it. It seemed fine.
Yeah.
So their proclamation
Yeah.
is fine.
It's easy enough to do, and I think if you guys want to pursue it, I'm happy to put something together and figure out how to get it into the agenda at the next commissioners meeting.
How do the commissioners feel about those sort of things? Like when this comes up, because I don't have any experience with them. If you bring this up at the meeting, commission meeting, we want to just acknowledge the Year of the Bird. Are they going to roll their eyes and vote for it, or is it something that's their enthusiasm for things like that?
The biggest question I've seen in the past is this going to cost us anything?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, usually, I think there's support, but I can't speak for everyone.
I can't tell you that I understand how the commissioners work, except I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about money.
Okay.
That's a compelling component of their decision process. We don't understand how they don't always agree with planning, but they don't.
Just for another thing, so if it doesn't cost us anything, and we'd go ahead and pass it, what does the Audubon Society get out of it, other than to say that 57 Pennsylvania communities have signed on instead of 56? Like, it doesn't do anything.
I kind of agree, and
Okay.
that's sort of what they get out of it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, it might help them in lobbying efforts at the state level.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good point.
sure, why not?
Okay. Anybody disagree with that? All right, I don't know if we need I guess we need another resolution here. All right, I'll propose that we pass the resolution.
I'll second it.
Got a second? All in favor? All right, it passes. I'll put it together and I'll I'll keep you guys posted. Thank you. Moving on to work group reports and discussion. Ron can't make it tonight, so Sustainable Pennsylvania, I think, Andrew, you said you had a few news items on this?
So the only thing that I thought to add about it was when we were at the EAC Summit in Havertown in mid-October, they said that the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development is actually now asking for sustainable PA certification as one of the factors in evaluating their grants. So I thought that was kind of at least an interesting thing that we're, at least involved in getting ahead of something that looks like coming down the pike is at least going to be a requirement for grant applications.
In the summit I went to, which was back in August or September, I asked that the DCVA president was there talking about sustainable PA, and I asked what is the benefit to the township, and she said that potentially, grants would consider this. So it looks like maybe that's coming to fruition. That's good.
So I mean, I don't know to what extent, but it was at least mentioned as you should look into this because it's something that's of value. So it's good that Ron pushed this and has gotten us at least to a baseline level.
Totally agree.
So that's great.
And what I understand from Ron in terms of updates, the state came back to us with some requests for clarification. He's been working with the township to update links and make sure that the data is accurate and correct. And he's pushing to get the links and the documentation basically finished by the end of the year. So with luck, I think, fingers crossed, we'll be in good shape to sign off on sort of a silver level of certification, and then we can decide from there if we want to go any deeper with it. All right? So thanks, everybody, for their help with that. Andrew, anything on plastic straws and bags?
No, nothing moved forward yet. I know Narberth passed an ordinance. I forgot to do it, but I mean to call over to Narberth and get a copy of theirs because I figure, A, that's a copy of an ordinance that we don't have to write from scratch, and B, we can get a little bit of experience of what their experience has been so far, with that.
I actually got that from them.
Oh, you
I
did?
can send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
I called
Thank
Harvard,
you.
and they sent me a copy of it.
Okay, perfect. And then one of the plastics plastics lobbying groups that I had been in touch with had asked me to send them a copy of it if I got it. So it's kind of funny that he doesn't even have it yet either.
Yeah, that is funny.
But the other thing is, I think to some extent, if we follow the Narberth plan and then we talk to maybe Haverford or Lower Merion, and if everyone's using the same platform, it kind of makes the industry case for opposing it by everyone's doing all these different things, and it makes it harder for different jurisdictions to stay in touch. It blunts that argument.
I like that logic a lot. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
So.
Colleen, just in your initial assessment, did that ordinance look like it was reasonable and something that we could do? Does it look burdensome?
No, it looked very reasonable, and they were even just talking on plastic straws. They weren't like essentially banning them. They were saying you had to, at each, if you went to the McDonald's, they have to ask you if you want a straw, because a lot of people don't even want them, and they just routinely give it to you. So it was kind of, I would have gone stronger on it, but I think it would be easy to get it passed because I thought it was a pretty reasonable ordinance.
Is there any enforcement associated with it? If I go to Starbucks in Narberth and they give me a straw without me asking?
There is a penalty.
There is?
On the second time.
Is it per straw?
On the second time there's a violation, there was something. And actually, the Girl Scouts were the ones who brought this ordinance to Narberth. It was one of their
That's
projects.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
So
it was
let me
very
suggest this. Why don't we take a look at the ordinance for next time?
Okay.
And see if we want to make any adjustments to it and bring it to a vote and see if we want to
Propose
get
it.
that out in front
Okay.
of the township.
And even if it's a little milder than we would write it, it's at least a
It's
good first
passable,
step.
yes.
And yeah, something that's passable is better than something that the
Right.
commissioners are not going to want to look at.
Exactly.
So Colleen and Andrew, I would ask the two of you to kind of
Okay.
take the lead on this, if you don't mind, and just get it out in front of us and
No problem.
guide us to figure out what we need to do language-wise.
Okay.
If we can just take it and adapt it with very little change, great. I think the argument for keeping things consistent is a
It's a
very
great
strong one.
idea.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Cool.
I put the review and approval of minutes down in the middle here because I wasn't sure how much time we had. Any concerns about the minutes that were circulated? Okay, we'll approve those then. Any announcements?
So just in terms of, again, that joint summit, there seemed to be a lot of resources, and there was some even talk of like private social media groups for all the attendees of all the local EACs to be able to communicate ideas to each other. I think I got one email from someone from the River Association kind of pushing that forward, but it's something that I thought was at least a valuable idea. There was also a lot of talk, I think, Colleen, you had spoken to the guy from Haverford Township who worked for PICO about the assessment specifically the assessment for this building, and I didn't know if that had gone anywhere yet.
He actually came and we met with Bob Zinkowski, the township manager, and he said basically PICO can tell you what the problem is, but you have to hire somebody to do an energy audit.
Okay.
So we sent them the names of a couple of different people who do an energy audit, and we're just waiting for Bob to select one of them.
Gotcha.
And they think the savings will be like $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Yeah,
That should pay for an energy audit pretty
It will pay for the
quickly.
energy
Yeah.
audit, so
Yeah.
that should be, but again, that's one of those things now, it's in Bob Zinkowski's hands, and I don't know what's happened to it at this point, but I did actually attend the meeting where the gentleman from PICO came.
Do you know the date of that meeting? Sorry, Skip.
No, I was just thinking some of that money could be spent on maybe having a charging station in the lot down here.
Yes,
Maybe a township vehicle could be an electric vehicle.
was all part of the discussion.
Do you know the date of that meeting, by the way?
I can send it to you.
Okay, I'm just, well, not just specifically to me, but it's like something we should kind of come back to every EAC meeting to sort of review that it's been 90 days or 120 days since a meeting and nothing's happened. or-
Okay.
And that's kind of what the green team used to do.
Right.
And I think that's a really good point. We need to kind of keep tabs on this stuff and make sure that we,
Get action
moving.
instead of just ideas.
yep,
Yeah.
totally agree.
So can
Totally
I
agree.
ask, the green team, who exactly would that be?
It's all of us, anybody who wants to participate, and it's a subcommittee, basically.
And it would be people who are going to attend different meetings and
Yeah,
just sort of track the different
That's right.
resolutions and the progress.
Right.
Right. And I met with the township about, the original green team was just EAC members, but I think they want to see this ready for 100 resolution to go through, and there's going to be an expansion of the green team, so they didn't want to just start with us. So I think it is going to be us plus residents and maybe some high school students.
Yep. And I think that's great. It makes things a little more complex in terms of how you manage it, but I think that it goes a long way toward building, coalitions, getting people really on board with it. Great, thank you. Other announcements? Yeah, go ahead.
One other thing from that meeting. Apparently, there's a website. It was eacnetwork.org that may have resources for EAC groups to pull from. So there was a link that they had shared at that meeting. Thought it was useful.
That's great. As you talk about that, it really makes me realize there are folks out there doing all kinds of stuff that we need to know about. So we ought to be part of that conversation.
Basically, we're all trying to do the same thing.
We're trying
Every
to do the same
EAC
thing.
group had the same ideas and had the same frustrations and
Yeah.
are at the same point we're at. So that's why we're saying we all want to join together.
And honestly, the Haverford Township group is incredibly active.
Yeah.
Like they are really, really dedicated and they got their stuff together a little
Yeah.
bit.
They're great. Good stuff. Any other announcements? Community environmental education and awareness. I don't know that we have anything here other than what we've talked about. If not, we'll go to Skip for a planning commission liaison report.
Yes, I would say that it's all about Wawa and only Wawa. The third Wawa is proposed for the corner of Aberdeen and Lancaster, where there is presently a Sunoco service. And I'm assuming not everybody knows all the facts. Sunoco service station and a BP car wash service station. It was a very high participation meeting by neighbors because the neighbors had not had a meeting with the developer, and the plans seemed to be presented without any input from the neighbors, and they were very unhappy about that. It is a by right use, though, because, I mean, there are gas stations there now. There's retail there now. The zoning is appropriate for this. So supposedly meetings have occurred since our meeting at the first week of November. We have a meeting on Tuesday, if anyone wants to tune in. I think after about the first 20 minutes of some small things that we have to do, it'll be only Wawa again. This is the preliminary meeting as opposed to the final meeting on the development plan. One of the big things that I hope happens is that they flip the pumps the pumps were going to be right next to the church, and then the building would be interior. And most people that commented at the meeting wanted the opposite. So we'll see. It's hard to fathom that Radnor Township needs 3 Wawas, but none of the other 2 aren't closing. So stay tuned. And there was actually nothing else on the agenda. There was some minor lot line changes at Ardrossan, but it's not worth mentioning any more than I just did.
What's happening with Penn Med? Anything?
That's approved, and it's, in the early stages of demolition construction.
Okay. Great, thank you.
For the Wawa gas station, did anyone suggest that they have an electric charging station? I mean, is there any indication that they intend to put one in? Or?
That did not come up, and on balance, every Wawa struggles for parking. I don't think they want you there for more than 15 minutes, so they can put somebody else there for another 15 minutes. Then, that being said, I don't know. I think they would force parking out of the Wawa facility if there were like 3 charging spots. People just leave their cars there and walk around Wayne, because Wayne is so walkable. So I think it belongs more in the public lots than it does there. And, there should be a mechanism to pay for that space, which Wawa wouldn't be charging for that space. There's 4 spots in the King of Prussia Mall, and for one reason or another, they're usually not occupied. But I'd say an office building would be a great location. In fact, that would be a possible resolution for EAC to consider down the road, that maybe you need a charging space for every 50 spaces or 100 spaces when you do new construction.
That's kind of a cool idea. I like that.
Well, it fits in with the 100 thing too.
Right.
Yep.
Do you think there's enough electric vehicles out there to justify that amount of charging
Well,
stations?
we have a Tesla dealer here in that, in Devon, and I think I see a few around.
Yeah.
It's a weird concept that when you think about it, you go to the mall, but you don't expect to be able to get 2 gallons of gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at an office building, and I think that the ultimate creative solution, long term, would be that if you agree to use the charging, or you're allowed to use the charging facilities at a office building, you, under emergency circumstances, might want to have your battery drained 50% in an emergency as like a generator that isn't a generator. In other words, if you're all hooked up, if half the cars are electric, you have a giant battery sitting out in your parking lot. So if your power goes down, there's your power. You just reverse it.
Oh, yeah. That's a good angle.
I heard something interesting just this week. The owner of my company has a Tesla, and he was just down there last week for some servicing, and every car in that lot is spoken for. They don't have, come in and test drive. Those cars are all, as soon as one goes, the next one comes in, and someone's already got that car, like they ordered it, months ago or years ago.
I know a couple people who are waiting on theirs. They've ordered, and they have no idea when they're going to get it, so they're so backlogged.
Things have changed so much. The last time the green team was really active, Tesla wasn't even on the scene. I mean, the technology has changed so dramatically. So yeah, I think these are things we should definitely talk about. Good stuff. Thank you.
I think definitely thinking about a resolution of a ratio of charging spaces, however that works out in terms of people shouldn't get free electricity exactly unless they contribute their battery back, kind of thing, or something like that. So short term, I know the manager of the mall, believe it or not, in Upper Merion, King of Prussia, and I'll ask him how that works.
Good, thank you.
His name is Bob Hart.
Nice. Thank you, Skip. Any new business? Any old business?
I'm just going to take the time to say this may be my last EAC meeting. I've got a conflict for next month, so I'm not sure I'm going to make that one. But it's been great to get to know all of you. Awesome enthusiasm in the group right now is really nice to see. And I think what you'll see if you hang with it for the 8 years is it's just really neat to see the group evolve and kind of go down different paths. And it's so cool. Like when I came here, we were just starting the green team. And so it's kind of neat and I know it kind of fizzled when some of the key people left. And so it's just really cool to see it kind of getting momentum again. So thank you for that.
Well, Dan, thank you for your years of service and for your leadership and your creativity.
All right.
We're going to miss you.
I'll stay in touch. I'm
do.
probably going to get a little more involved with the Radnor Conservancy now.
Great.
But I'll keep tabs on you guys.
Well, we'll come and find you when we have questions.
All right.
You can still babysit your meadow?
Yeah, I'm going to be working on that. Actually, recommended one of my neighbors. She's a civil engineer. She put in a resume to fill my spot.
Oh,
I have
great.
no idea how that works, if there's a waiting list. But
Thanks for doing that. I don't think so.
yeah.
I think it's just a matter of making sure the wheels keep turning. So
Yeah.
I'll give them a nudge.
Okay. All right.
Would you mind sending me her
Ben
name?
Cooper is aware that I'm leaving.
That's great,
so,
okay.
It's probably on someone's agenda somewhere.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind sending me the contact information for your neighbor,
Okay.
that would be helpful, and I can kind of make sure things move
Okay.
forward.
Yeah. So just two things that I kind of never got around to. You guys have a full plate right now, so I'm not suggesting you pick this up. But the back of my yard, where there's a street behind that, and so our backyards face, and all the power and phone are on lines down the common rear property line. There's at least 8 wires running through my backyard. And I'm figuring there's Pico, there's Comcast, there's Verizon, and there's like 4 or 5 obsolete phone lines.
Dan, that was on the agenda of one of the commissioners' meetings.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know
great.
the resolution of it, but
I know that
it
Jay
was on the-
Gable has kind of been championing the problem of these old wires falling down and kids start, playing with them and pulling on them, and, there's only 240 volts a few feet away. Why should we be worried? So, anyway, it just seems like there's probably thousands of miles of this cable running through our township that's basically there because it's cheaper to leave it there than to take it down and deal with it. But a tree came down on my neighbor's yard over the winter, and now, 4 of those lines are probably within 3 or 4 feet of the ground. And Verizon came through and actually snapped a phone pole, put in a new phone pole, just tied the old one to it. But obviously just kind of determined, like, okay, these are the lines that we need to keep up, and these we don't need to worry about anymore.
Probably a lot of good copper in there, right?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
All right.
So that's one thing. The other thing, about 6 months ago, I went to a really interesting conference in Philadelphia. It was on biophilia, which if you don't, the philia has nothing to do with Philadelphia. If you're not familiar with that, it's this idea that really our cities should just be completely natural areas where the buildings are, literally just green walls, roofs, everything is just green. And that would, just kind of have created this oxygen-producing environment instead of everything's just paved. So anyway, there I met really interesting guys, a lighting consultant, and one of the things he does is consult with townships on their lighting ordinances. And his focus really was on just how the lighting has such a devastating effect on insects and migrating birds, and bird strikes into buildings and all these things. So he offered 6 months ago if the EAC was interested in hearing from him, he'd be happy to come and talk. Now, I haven't talked to him in a few months. So again, you guys have a lot of stuff going on, but feel free to reach out to me if anyone's got an interest in that. And
Great. Yeah, I'd love to have that contact if you don't mind.
okay.
And is his focus on kind of light pollution, or is it also on the energy efficiency side?
I would guess it would be both. I think it was the focus, at least at this biophilia, was the light pollution.
Okay.
But, you know, he's a lighting designer.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's doing everything with LEDs now and would
Yeah.
know that. So.
Yeah, presumably though, if you're reducing light, you're decreasing energy, so it might tie right back into the Ready for 100.
I think it does, but my impression is that some of the LED solutions produce too much light, and that is making light pollution worse, especially in certain spectra. But I don't know any of the facts on that. I think that's just something I heard, so I'd love to learn more about that.
That was brought up at the EAC conference as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I just blasted through all the Radnor ordinances this morning. Look, you know, just Googled lighting. Well, we have a link to the ordinances at my company, and just, you know, queried on lighting. And there's probably a half dozen mentions. Everything's about pointing downward, don't glare outwards. There's one mention of meeting the International Dark Sky Association guidelines or something like that. So I sense that we're probably pretty good. I think there's probably a lot of people that are uplighting their houses for that kind of dramatic effect, and that's kind of pretty damaging. So maybe there's some education there. So anyway, I'll get that guy's contact information. I'll give him a call tomorrow. It's been a few months, and see if he still would have any interest. You know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And I think, you know, as we broaden out this Ready for 100 thing, maybe there are opportunities. I think the more people we can kind of at least engage in the conversation, the better. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks so much.